guys, good day to all of you. I'm Mr. Jason Tintiman, aka Mr. T. And today, I'm going to answer some questions regarding special education. One of our students in Navajo Pine High School would like to know more about special education. So, because we cannot do physical interview, so the student just sent me his questions, and I'm going to answer these questions based on my knowledge. Our first question here. Hello, Mr. T. How long have you been in special education? Thank you for that question, and before I answer that, I'd like to again introduce myself to all of you. I'm Mr. Jason Tintiman, aka Mr. T. Currently, I'm a special education teacher here in Navajo Pine High School, and I'm also a special ed lead teacher both in Navajo Pine High School and in Navajo Middle School. And I've been in special education since 2008. I started my career as a special education teacher at Parañaque National High School. And to all my colleagues at Parañaque National High School, I will never forget all of you. You are deeply in my heart. Okay? So having said that, I've been in special ed like 12 years, going to 13 years. Okay? So we have the next question. What is special education? Okay. So there are lots of definition about special education. Okay, I'll just make it a simple definition of special education. A special education is a service provided to students who cannot learn in a regular manner or in a regular way. Okay, so special education refers to a range of services and support that are provided in different ways and in different settings for students with special needs. Special education is a practice of educating students that addresses individual differences. Okay? So let me give you an example of special education. So for example, we have a student who cannot see or blind, or a student who cannot hear or hearing impaired, or we call them deaf. So imagine a student who is blind put in a regular classroom. Okay, so imagine a student. Okay, so if we are not going to provide support, help, or services for this student who is blind, it will be very difficult for this blind or deaf or student with hearing impairment or student with visual impairment learn the things that he or she needs to learn. So imagine that the teacher is teaching, for example, Pythagorean theorem. Okay, guys, this is the Pythagorean theorem, and the teacher starts to draw a picture or a diagram of a triangle. Imagine if you are that blind student. How can you learn without you cannot see the visuals? Okay, so in order for that student or the other student who has a hearing impairment, how can that student learn? Because in his case, or her case, the student with hearing impairment, you are like acting without. You are like watching a movie without a sound. So it's impossible. It's very difficult for that student with hearing impairment to learn. So here comes special education. The school will provide appropriate services for these students, like the students with hearing impairment and the students with problems with seeing, or students with who are blind, okay, or who cannot see. I support would be there will be a person who will sign while the regular teacher is teaching the lesson. There is a SPED teacher who will sign so that this student with hearing impairment can understand what the teacher is discussing. Okay, so that is an example. And also for the student with impairment in visual, a SPED teacher can provide a tactile or something that the student can touch. So when the student with visual impairment touch the provided activity or provided material, the student with visual impairment can mentally picture the shape and the size or something like that. Okay, so that's it. I hope you understand more about it. Okay, another question. Who can say that a student is SPED? Okay, so that is a question that usually asked. Are you SPED? And the answer for that is SPED is not a person. SPED is a short word for special education. You cannot say, are you special education, or who are special education? Maybe your question is who are students who can be classified or categorized as special education learners or special education students. Okay, that would be maybe the question that you want to ask me. Who are students with, or who are students in the special education program? Who can be classified as students with special needs? Okay, so we have a law that protects the students with special needs, and we have what we call the IDEA or the IDEA. This is what you call Individuals with Disability Education Act, and they provided a list of students or person with disabilities, and I'm going to post here, okay, the categories of students with special needs. Okay, so what is IDEA or IDEA? The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is a law ensuring services to children with disabilities throughout the nation. IDEA governs how states and public agencies provide early intervention, special education, and related services to more than 6.5 million eligible infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities. So we have 14 categories of special education according to IDEA or IDEA. Okay, we have preschool disabled under the age of 3, autism, blindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, cognitively impaired, multiple disabilities, 2+ from the list, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, specific learning disability, speech language impairment, traumatic brain injury, visual impairment including blindness. There are 14 categories of special education as defined by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Okay, so the law, the IDEA gave categories of students who can be in the special education. Okay, so next question. How is teaching in this type of situation different from teaching in a regular classroom? So the students in special education, because they have difficulty, whether it is in reading, writing, or in math, they process differently. Others need more time and others need more practice and repetition before they understood the concept being taught. Some are also fast and very smart. They can learn quickly, but they are easily bored or they have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder that they cannot just sit properly in a longer period of time. So there are different ways on how you teach a student with special needs. It depends on what they need. The school will base the accommodations, modifications to the students with special needs. Okay? Okay, next question for our student. Next question we have, what are some special features that your classroom provides? So, I'm an inclusion special education teacher. So most of the time I'm like a student. I go where my special education students are. For example, they have class in algebra. So I'll be there inside the classroom with them. And while there is a regular teacher teaching the lesson, and I'll be there inside the room with the regular teacher and with the students, and I provide support by modifying some of the lessons, by giving visual presentation, by teaching them how to do the task, by supporting them, by guiding them. Okay, and I do this not only to my students with special needs, because sometimes they are teenagers and they don't want to be labeled like, hey, why are you having a person teaching you there? Are you crazy, or are you different? So what I do as a special education teacher, in order for my SPED learner or SPED student not to be labeled as different, I provide my services to all students inside the classroom, whether they are in special education or not. So just not to have like, hey, wherever Mr. T comes, student is in special education. So I don't want that to affect my students in special needs. So I help all the students inside the classroom. If they need, or if they call me, Mr. T, need help, so I go there and teach them. Okay? So, okay. In addition, okay, some special education teachers are doing resource classes. Sometimes I do too. I pull out students in the regular classroom and we go to the resource room where I can teach and guide the student on a one-on-one basis. I can also provide the student modified lessons or modules, or I can use projector or teach the lesson in more comprehensible manner for the student. How many classes do you have each day? Okay, since I am in the inclusion program, I follow where my students are. So I basically attend all the classes morning to afternoon. I have one break in the first period, and that's it. Then I have to go to second period, third period, and so on and so forth. So the next question, how many students do you see each day? It depends on if I'm going to include the students in the regular class, so I usually like see 10-15 students. But if you're asking how many students in the special education am I seeing each day, probably it depends. It depends on the attendance. So sometimes in one class I have 2 students. In other class I have 4. In other class I have 3, sometimes 1. So it depends. Maybe you're asking me how many students in the special education you are handling. So right now I have 21 students. Okay, so if we are in a regular class, if there's no pandemic, okay, I should be meeting 20 students each day. Okay, so it depends on my caseload. So I will work on my 21 students, but sometimes they don't go to, some of the students do not go to school, so I might be like seeing like 10 or less than 10 each day. Okay? Okay, next question. Why is this class enjoyable? Who told you that it's enjoyable? Glad to know. Glad to hear that. Okay? So, I'm just kidding. I would not use the word enjoyable because there are also lots of struggles and challenges. But I would say I would say that the class is different. The class is unique. The class is exciting. I would say that. Maybe you've heard that the class is enjoyable because when I pull out my students, especially the resource room, we have like a whole new world there in the resource room. Okay, I can provide differentiated activities or modules, and while they're doing that, I can allow them to listen to music. Okay, I can provide some simple snacks. So I think my students love to go to the resource room because I want that resource room to become a sanctuary, a haven of learning while enjoying. Okay, because most of the time where we are inside the classroom, it's like you have to sit there, focus, listen, participate. Okay, but inside the resource room, they can stand, they can stretch, they can move around, they can when I give them a differentiated module, they can listen to music while answering these modules. So I think that they say that, oh, I love in the resource room, it's enjoyable. Thanks for that description, but the reason why I do that because I want my students to enjoy learning, and I will do different means, a strategy, just to get them, to get their attention, to get their focus, to learn something. Okay? Oh, next question. Next question, guys. What are some of the challenges? Some of the challenges in special education. Okay. I would say that students' behavior another is a challenge. Student behavior is a challenge. Some students are hard to work with because of their behavior. Some students are like overwhelmed with the task, so they are confused, and they really need the support coming from the special education teacher, coming from the regular teacher, coming from like the counselor, coming from their families and friends, and some students, they've been struggling, they've been abused. So I understand why some of their behaviors are not acceptable inside the classroom, and that's why we have special education services. That's why they are also in this special education, because of these challenges within themselves. So one problem is student behavior, and another challenge is creating a modified lesson for my students. So fortunately, I have the skill of writing a book, making a book. That's why I have crafted so many differentiated modules, and I provide these modules with step-by-step process on how to solve it. It is guided. There is direction on how to do it, to solve it, and at the end of the module, there is like an activity that does not have a guide anymore. So I use the I do, we do, you do model. I do, I explain in my module, I explain first what to do. We do is like guided, there's a guide, and you follow. And at the end, you do. So there's no more guide, but you have to answer it all by yourself. So I followed the I do, you do, I do, we do, you do model. Okay, so what else? Challenges. So another I would consider challenge is doing the IEP. IEP is a legal document, so there's no room for mistake, or else you'll be in trouble. The parents can sue you if you do not make the IEP correctly, and at the same time, if you do not follow the IEP, then you will be in trouble. So IEP, or what is the IEP? Individualized Education Plan, or Individualized Education Program, is the program dedicated for students with special needs. So IEP is the heart and soul of the special education program or process. Okay, so this IEP includes the things, the accommodations, the modifications, the services that you should provide to the students with special needs. So that is another challenging task, to create annual goals, to create objectives, and to to discuss matters that will help the students learn or develop. Okay? Okay. Okie dokie. The next question, guys. What curriculum requirements do you have for these classes? Okay, a good question. What curriculum requirements do you have for these classes? So, the curriculum may differ, or the curriculum differs. It is based on a student's category. Okay, based on student's graduation option. Okay, so in New Mexico, we have 3 graduation options. Okay, we have the regular option. Okay, which is if the student is in that regular option, the student needs to comply with the requirements the same with the regular students. So regular option, if they need to pass this certain examination, so the students must pass that also. The student with special need must pass that also. And the other one, regular option, the second one, we have the ability option. Okay, ability option is more on skills. Okay, the student must be able to show these skills in order to graduate. So in the IEP meeting, the team will discuss the equivalent requirement for this student in the ability option to graduate. So they're gonna discuss it. They're gonna make a portfolio for these students to submit different activities in order for these special education students to graduate in the ability option. And the other one, the last, is the career option. Okay, so the same thing. In the career option, there are requirements that created by the IEP team that the regular student must comply or must pass in order to graduate. Again, the curriculum requirements basically depends on the student's graduation option, and we have the regular option, the ability option, and the career option. Okay. Woohoo! Okay, how are the students placed in the mainstream, inclusion, etc.? Okay, a good question. Okay, so why some students are in the mainstream, some are in the resource room, some are pull-outs? Again, it depends on the student's category or disability. If the student is in the specific learning disability, for example, the student has problem like understanding math. He or the student has difficulty in learning math. Okay, only in math. In English, the student doesn't have any problem at all, but only in math. So specific learning disability. So every time the student looks at numbers, like he or she is confused. So the student only has the specific learning disability, and the student will still attend the regular class. So the student is in the inclusion program. Okay, the student is in the mainstream, in the inclusion. Okay, so but if the student has intellectual disability like your age is like 14 years old, but there is kind of a wrong wiring or connection in your brain, that even if you are 14 years old, your brain is like 5 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old or 6 years old. So your brain is not regular, or not the same with the regular student. So you are in the student is in the intellectual disability category. So this student, if you're going to put this student in the inclusion, the student might be confused, the student might be frustrated, because imagine you are like grade 1 and the teacher is teaching you probability. That is like overwhelming to the student. So the student cannot learn, or will not learn, unless of course there's the other spectrum of special education, which is gifted. Okay, so the student we're talking about here, the intellectual disability. So the student with intellectual disability will have a difficult time learning in the inclusion. So that student with intellectual disability will be taught in a different setup. Okay, in a different setup. So a special education teacher will handle these students in a different setup, and they also use different curriculums. Okay, so maybe the objective is the same, but the approach is different, and the level of the lesson is also different. Okay, so we have the mainstream, the inclusion, and what else? Basically, that's it. It really depends on the category of the students where we can place these students. Okay, what else? Can you briefly explain the IEP process and how it helps the students? Okay, can you briefly explain the IEP process and how it helps the students? The IEP process starts with identifying. So whoever it is, okay, a neighbor, a teacher, a security guard, notice something's different with the student, okay, with the pupil, with the learner. That person can go to the principal, to the teacher, and tell his or her observation. And with that initial step of identifying or recognizing that there is something different with the learner, then there will be the next step, which is I'm gonna show you the flow of the process. Okay, so I'm gonna use a visual presentation, and I'm going to put it here. Okay,
it starts with the pre-referral. During the pre-referral phase, parents work together with teachers and staff to try and resolve problems informally within the classroom. And if that wasn't solved, the problem will go to the referral phase. If informal measures are not solving the problem, you can request an evaluation for special services. Referrals can be made by parents, teachers, or other staff. So you can send a letter. Once you send a letter, you have 15 days. That is what we call the informed consent. After receiving a referral, the school district has 15 days to provide the parent with a plan for evaluating the child's needs. After reviewing it, The parents have 15 days to sign the consent before testing can begin. Then after that, we have the evaluation process. Qualified school district personnel will assist the child to determine whether the child needs special education services. Evaluations may be conducted by the school psychologist, speech or language pathologist, occupational and physical therapists, and others as needed. Then after the evaluation, we go to the IEP meeting. After the evaluation is done, you will meet involved school personnel to review results and discuss your child's needs. If your child qualifies, you will discuss what services your child will receive and establish goals for the next year. Then, the next step is the implementation. Once you have signed the IEP, it will be implemented as soon as possible. If you disagree with the plan, you can request mediation to resolve the dispute. Then, always attend the IEP meetings. That's it.
Thank you for watching. This is Mr. T. I hope you learned something today. And good luck. And see you as a special education teacher. Bye. Thanks for watching. Always remember, stay safe and healthy. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you.